Hi all, so I wanted to backtrack a little bit and talk about some basics around the terminology that I've been using, the true self, the trauma or the false self, and speak a little bit more about the beginnings of my spiritual journey. When I was young, I was highly intuitive and very confused. Part of my trauma in my youth was holding a lot of awareness around when people were lying to themselves. I could see it in their systems. And so my intuitive skills have been a blessing and a burden. And as a child, they were a burden because I could see a lot of truth that other people, adults, could not see in themselves. It was very confusing for me. Why my reality didn't reflect the truth that I knew and why other people didn't seem to recognize this truth. So for a long time, I thought that there was something really wrong with me. I took it upon myself to carry all of these burdens of sort of false selves of the people around me and develop a very codependent, masochistic sort of system where I got very depressed. I was on many different psychotropic drugs, in and out of therapy and doctors, and trying to seek answers to what was wrong with me and why things felt off, why I was constantly getting all of this information that didn't seem to land anywhere but within me. And I had a hard time having it be reflected in relationships. And there were a few people that came along that would reflect it and they would see it too, but they were highly unstable. So it was my training. It was my my false self being constructed so that as an adult I could deconstruct it, so I can understand contrast between the two worlds, so that I can come into this role of speaking my truth and guiding others with theirs. But I had to understand what wasn't truth. I had to really have that training. So it was very valuable and I'm grateful for it. But there was a point in my journey in my early 20s where I was extremely depressed and I was seeking yet another therapist. And I'm not speaking down to therapy or to medication or anything like that if those things work for you. And as they hopefully now, there are a lot more options available. And this was also my experience. Like I do believe that I was specifically meeting people that would block me just to give me this training, right? So this is my experience. And so I went to see a therapist, and it was kind of the same as a lot of the other therapists I had been to, where I would sit there and talk and wait for her to give me the magic pill, as I call it. And our society is built around, we have a constructed reality around the magic pill. We seek solace outside of ourselves. We seek answers outside of ourselves. We externalize our pain by numbing, by addictions, by technology, by work, by all sorts of ways that we distract ourselves because we are struggling. And this is a deeply human trauma in this time that it's a collective thing. And so to deconstruct it, we have to start with the self. And for me, my therapist, had this kind of knowing look on her face because I was grappling. I was helpless. I was, asking her, like, how can you fix me? How can you heal me? How can you help me? I'm broken. And so what she did was, rather than say anything, she handed me a book called There's Nothing Wrong with You by Sherry Huber, who's a Zen Buddhist. And I took one look at this book and at that title and was struck to the core with something. There's nothing wrong with me? Here I've been carrying around this trauma that there's something wrong with me most of my life, and you're telling me there's nothing wrong with me. And yet it rang true. I held something, some expansive space opened up within me, and I recognized truth. And so a bit of my trauma fell away, a bit of my false self, the layers that I'd carried from distrust and from codependence and from fear and from all of these parts of my life teachings, a little bit of that deconstructed in that moment because I recognized something true. And in that moment that I recognized something true, I gave myself permission automatically to feel better, to feel more whole and complete, because in that moment I stopped seeking outside myself because I was just given the answer, which is there's nothing wrong. There's actually nothing wrong. Now, is there something incorrect going on between my belief system, between my the trauma that I've carried from all of this crap and and how my reality is reflecting back to me, yes, there's something that needs to shift. But that was a core key piece to my journey, was making that recognition and that shift in the road, where all of a sudden I automatically, because of my knowing true center, my true self lighting up, and this permission to feel just good for no reason. Like, I don't need a reason to feel good. I don't need a magic pill outside of me to feel good. The magic pill is in here. So I had this understanding that I had everything I needed inside of me, and that became the search for the magic pill inside. So I stopped looking outside for the magic pill, because in that moment I had a sort of, physical understanding and psychological understanding through experience of what it felt like to give myself that kind of permission. So what I am trying to do in my work, and what I hope to do through these videos, is highlight to you, to your true self, to let you remember that there's nothing wrong with you, and that's what we're trying to uncover, is this remembrance. And so see how these things work, together. There's a duality to healing. There's this false stuff that can fall away when we have something else come in. So when I speak of the true self and the false self and the magic pill, you have a little bit of understanding of what it is that I'm talking about. And so for you, how do you resonate when you hear truth? Do you trust it? Do you follow it? Do you allow the thing to fall off? Do you give yourself the permission to be worthy in that moment of feeling better, like of feeling well for no reason? Like, did you know you don't need a reason to feel good about yourself? Like, I didn't know that. I had no idea that I could do that I had that kind of power. And so this is where we talk about source energy and love and light and empowerment and all these things. Building this muscle of remembering who you are, which is, at its highest expression, is a purity of this experience. And so we're peeling back these layers. We're facing our pain. We're witnessing the beliefs inside of us from our own childhood trauma or birth trauma, or whenever we've experienced trauma as adults. And when we're ready and we have enough sort of these things happening at once, something falls away and we can trust a little bit more, and we can move forward on our healing journey, on our path. So this spiritual journey, it's not really that complicated. And I think that when a lot of terminology is being used, it can appear complicated. And so I guess I just want to speak to this. It's not very complicated. The moment I had with this book was not complicated. It was just a light went on. And for a moment I trusted it. Now, it didn't last. I had a lot more learning to do, and I had a lot more challenges to be met. And, it's taken many years of developing a practice to consistently remind myself that this is true. But it can be done. It is something that can be worked towards. So I'm here to remind you today that there's nothing wrong with you. You're worthy of being here, worthy of showing up to the work for yourself, of receiving the benefit of living in fullness, and of living your highest expression of self in your life that resonates with you. Okay? Signing off.